3, 2, 1. We are back on It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati. Lindsay Patterson, Mike Santagata here. Mike, we are recording on Halloween. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. We just passed out candy. Ran out with like 15 minutes ago. Hope nobody needed any. There was a lot this year. I feel like in the past couple of years we've had leftover because I was eating it like the next week. But this year, no leftovers. Took it all. But
what kind of house are you? Are you a
we buy like a value pack. We bought 3 different of the like mixed bags. Like there was one with Kit Kat, Reese's Pumpkins as well. Big winner. Had some Whoppers and then another value pack with Skittles and Starburst, and then also had the Dum Dums hanging around. So, you know, they had a variety, I will say. When you got towards the ends, it was all Dum Dums. So that was the clear loser, but there was a variety.
Well, it sounds like a successful night for you and the trick-or-treaters. The Cincinnati Bengals, not so great news as they hit the practice field on Wednesday and Thursday. T. Higgins hasn't practiced the last 2 days. He has been working with the trainers. Orlando Brown Jr. has been out the last 2 days. I do want to note this. If you subscribe to Locked On, friends of the show, James and Jake, they did have a subtext, and I'll give you a little breaking news here if you didn't hear it. But the goal is for Orlando to play on Sunday. There's still pretty high expectations that Orlando is going to play. They're going to be light this week. Is there a chance he doesn't play? Always. There's always a chance. But T. Higgins is looking like he's going to be missing this game, but does have a shot against the Baltimore Ravens. So unfortunate news, not to more than likely be without T. Higgins for 2 games in a row, but hopefully Orlando Brown Jr. can be out there for the offensive line when they face the Raiders. Any thoughts on the injury news so far this week, Mike?
I mean, if I had to guess, T. Higgins isn't playing, which not that big of a surprise, I guess. When you see did not practice on the rehab field for both those days. Orlando, a little surprising because wasn't he also a DNP today, or was I wrong on that?
He's a DNP. Okay. Today. And it's kind of similar. I mean, obviously, I feel like they went limited whenever he was dealing with anything last year, and he still practiced, or he'd miss 1 day of practice and be fine the next day. But according to the Locked On subtext, there is a pretty high expectation that he's still going to go, but there's still a chance, obviously, he doesn't play. Leaning towards Orlando playing versus T.
Yeah. It's pulled up the whole practice report. A lot of limited participants, but like I don't think you're concerned about weird Amarius Mims getting added today, but as a full participant, you're not that worried. But just like what happened? Why wasn't this here yesterday? Yeah, it was really light yesterday, it felt like, with just Orlando, Joe, who's been on it all year, Chris Jenkins has been on it all year as full participants, and T. It's like, oh, yeah, that's what expected. And then the next day hit, and you're like, oh, and Mims and Stones and Charlie and not as big as the Raiders yet. Theirs is a pretty lengthy list. A lot of full practices for them, too. So it might not be that bad, but a couple I'm watching, but we'll get to that. Yeah, for the Bengals, I'm a little surprised Orlando might play. I guess the big question, will he play the whole game? Because he was able to get out there for the Eagles game, thought he played well, and then couldn't finish it. Now, some Orlando's better than no Orlando, but it is a question of like, don't, re-aggravate it by putting yourself out there, because missing Orlando for 1 week, that stinks, but missing him if he hits, pulls something that's already a little messed up, missing him for a month, that's, well, you know how I feel about their playoff odds already. That might be the final nail of those playoff odds, which are on life support.
100%. I mean, as Joe said, this is a must win for them. Urgency is high, and they're at home. They're 0-4 right now. They're back home. In the home crowd, I'll be in attendance on Sunday. I'd really like to walk away. Mike, I've been to 5 games this year, and I've only watched them win 1 game, and it was on the road.
Jersey. Yeah, the one in New York.
Like, come on, you got to get that home win eventually. And I can't think of a better time than now. It's a very short week. tough task next week, but I don't even want to get into what that's going to look like in AFC North play when you take on the Baltimore Ravens, who are also dealing with a lot of injuries on the defensive side. But overall, the Bengals are matching up with the Oakland. Oh my goodness, Las Vegas.
It still should be Oakland.
It should still be the Oakland Raiders. My goodness. But a matchup with a team who Zach Taylor says is better than their record.
I don't disagree.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of that's coach speak. You're never going to say like, yeah, they're bums. Like we should go out there and win by 30. Like I know some fans want the coach to say that for some reason. And when you play video games, I think one of the funniest things is being able to answer that at press conferences and be like, yeah, those bums won't be able to cover me. It's like, nobody says that. Nobody says that. So I like don't 100% disagree. Like I think their secondary isn't very good. You've got Morig, who's interesting. Nate Hobbs is they've got a couple players that aren't bad. But there is also players that I think are bad on that secondary. I'm not going to call them out. It's not like they're going to say anything about me, but Robert Spillane, former Steeler, dealing with an injury, back-to-back back-to-back DNPs for him. He hasn't practiced this week yet. So we'll see if it's him or if you're going to end up getting, I don't know these people other than I think Tommy Eichenberg was a Notre Dame graduate. I didn't watch him though. Divine Diablo is interesting. Their other linebacker, he's a blitzer and he does a really good job when he blitzes. He's actually, I think, 3rd or 4th on the team in pressures, and he blitzes like 20% of the time he's on the field. So that's a guy I kind of had circled of like interesting. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you have Max Crosby, right? Like anytime you have a superstar like Max Crosby, things can go haywire. Like that's why I think this is a little bit better. My guy, Adam Butler, I was in on the Bengals signing him like 3 years ago. Now he's 2nd on that team in pressures. I think he's chaotic. He gives an Ogunjobi vibe. He can get some pressure though, especially if the Bengals interior is going to play under expectations. You know, he's a good penetrator on stunts. They run quite a few stunts. Like that is something that I think if you were the offensive line coach, you'd want to be hammering. They blitz, they stunt, they try to play fast, they try to play chaotic on defense. I don't think like it overall works that well, but when you do look at their percentages, I think they get pressure. Like they're not a team that gives you 5 seconds to throw the ball. And obviously when you have Max Crosby, that's true, but I just think it's true about the whole team is just a little chaotic. Tyree Wilson, waiting on something there, waiting on him to do something. He's got a couple of pressures this year and a sack. He's strong. They started putting him on the interior a little bit this season. Don't have much else for you. Like he's a 1st-round talent. He was taken, I think, the top 10. Might even been earlier. Like people thought he was going to be one of the best players on that. Oh, Tommy Eichenberg, Ohio State, not Notre Dame. Well, didn't watch him. But thank you, Spencer, for the update. So I didn't sound too stupid for too long. But yeah, finishing the defense is just, they're chaotic. I could see how things go haywire if you get a couple of turnovers or some sacks that send you behind the chains. Will they be able to run the ball? They should. Will they? Who knows? This is the worst rushing attack in the NFL over the past 4 weeks. By far. It's not even close. So we'll see. But yeah, they're interesting on defense. I think there's a way that they have a decent defensive day.
Yeah, no, I don't count anyone out when the Cincinnati Bengals playing right now, just because there's been a lot of disappointing players out there. They've been mostly vets. And as you said, underperforming. It's really unfortunate because you have a quarterback who's playing the best football out of every NFL quarterback right now. And he doesn't even have a run game. So unfortunate for Joe. And I'm really hoping this is the time where this offense can get something going. But as you mentioned, Max Crosby, he can tear up a game. He gives me those Chris Jones type of vibes where he can just wreck it on his own, and he'll have a little help there too. So that's just something to keep an eye on. One of the things we talked about it on the podcast on Tuesday, but it has been a topic of conversation. I don't mean to drag this out because I will say this: I hope Jermaine Burton is a big part of this offense going forward. I have to say it. Because there's more comments today. I hope he is a big part of this offense going forward. I think that is good news for the Bengals in the wide receiver room because they're more than likely going to be moving on from T. Higgins at the end of the season. Hey, maybe even during the season. Who knows what that'll look like. But I think it's important to note that it's encouraging to hear Joe Burrow talk about him in his press conference and say, over the last few weeks, We're continuing that quarterback wide receiver dialogue, gaining confidence. Jamar Chase talked about it today. And if you go back and there was a mic'd up with Jamar Chase, you can see little clips of Jamar helping Jermaine during the game. And I think that's awesome. I think that's awesome from Jamar.
I saw that from my seat. Yeah. A few times he had to do that, which it is cool from Jamar, but it is also like one of those, you can't play fast when, you need to help him line up.
Yeah. And at the same time, obviously you want him to pick it up. I talked to TJ Hushmanzada, and I didn't mean for this to come across as a negative thing for Jermaine Burton, because I felt like when I talked to TJ Hushmanzada, he's a mentor of Jermaine, and he even mentioned, hey, he needs to be out there. He'd be a big part of this offense, but he knows what he has to do. So hopefully they're getting to that point in the season where they can utilize Jermaine Burton more. I want Jermaine Burton to score 15 billion touchdowns on Sunday. And hopefully that confidence is continuing to grow, because if T. Higgins is going to be sidelined, I need to see Mike Gesicki out there. We talked about it on Tuesday's podcast, maybe more of that slot wide receiver, third receiver role, because he's reliable. I know he had the fumble, but he's mostly reliable when he's out there, and you need that if guys like Yoshi aren't stepping up. Charlie Jones is really not getting the reps. Trenton Irwin, I feel like they've kind of counted him out, but at times he'll be active. So I want Jermaine Burton to out for this offense, and he might need to be a big part going into this game versus the Raiders.
Yeah. Jermaine Burton's probably not in my top 5 concerns for what's going on with the offense.
Oh, there's a lot going on.
So that's my one thought about this is wow, this gets a lot of airtime. I have opinions. My opinions are basically, it's a two-way street. Like you should be upset that the coaching staff couldn't figure out a way to use him. You could also understand that they expected him to be a little bit better on the details and be a little bit more, higher rate of learning everything, knowing all the formations, because other rookies have come in and done that. But at the same time, it's a two-way street. Like, go find him plays. Like I mentioned this, go get him 12 plays that he knows in and out. And that's just the start. Once he knows those plays in and out, you add on 5 more, something like that. Just so you can get him on the field, because he is really talented. I think he's talent-wise their 3rd best receiver. But do I think that Yoshi helps him out? He helps him out more as a blocker. He's been better in the low red zone. He doesn't get as open as Jermaine, but I just think that he knows everything that's going on. He knows, and he seems to have known that from last year. Like he just, kind of a grinder. So it makes sense also why the coaching staff's going to appreciate that. The whole Trent Irwin thing is like, he gets more mentions on Twitter than he gets snaps. He doesn't really see the field anymore. Anyway, the bigger concern for me is like the run game is putrid. And I don't think Burton helps that, because he's not a good blocker. He wasn't in college, at least. Maybe he will be in the NFL, but he doesn't really help the run game take off, because teams are already playing light boxes. It's not like, oh, but he's going to take a safety out of the box. You think there's a safety in the box when Jamar Chase is on the field? Not really. It's been not with T. Higgins either, and he was on the field for a couple of these games that have been putrid running games. So I'm more concerned about that. How do you get that fixed? They've done a little bit better against these type of defenses that are kind of aggressive and chaotic than they have with the defenses that are more sound and try to keep things in front of them. Chaos creators, they do a better job than the ones that kind of, you can either attack or react, and these defenses attack. They do better against those ones and counterpunching them than they do with the defenses that react to what's going on and playing what's in front of them, just being sound, two-gapping, strong. But it's hard because these defenses will put a dent, and you saw it with Cleveland where that run game never got started because they just gave up penetration left and right, and they just got beat up at the point of attack. That can't happen in this game. I think that the personnel for Cleveland's a little bit stronger than the personnel for the Raiders up front. So there's a decent shot that the run game could get back on track. But that's like my biggest concern, because it is red alarms bad. It was pretty good the first 4 weeks. And then the next 4, when you're supposed to be building on things, I've got multiple issues. I wrote the article about this, but your first issue, the offensive line, terrible. It's bad blocking across the board for the most part. But then once in a while they hit, everything works. And the running backs, this is the most surprising one to me, when I'm seeing the running backs miss these opportunities, because you can find a guy off the street that could fall forward. Like that is That's a little concerning because these guys aren't making guys miss as runners either. Maybe in the passing game, but not in the run game. They're not making anybody miss. So when you're not making guys miss and you're not falling forward and you're missing opportunities, in my opinion, I had 3 different plays that I labeled as running back issues, not as offensive line issues as to why it failed, including 2nd and 2 on that. You would have never had 4th down if, I think it was Chase Brown. If Chase Brown just hits the right hole, lowers his shoulder and falls forward, you needed 2 yards. These are short yardage. There's another play, Zach Moss, ISO, fall forward, just run right into that defender and fall forward, and you have a touchdown. Instead, he jump cuts out of the hole and gets tackled for no gain. There's nowhere where are you jump cutting? He runs into his own offensive lineman, stops all his momentum, and gets tackled. Run forward, fall forward, use your momentum, use your strength. It's frustrating. And then the most frustrating one to me, though, is probably the play calling because it's just full of half-baked ideas. You talk about all this pistol stuff, the counter stuff, the power stuff. It was so cool the first 4 weeks, and it worked the first 4 weeks. But the NFL kind of works in 4-week periods. Your first 4 weeks, you put the stuff on film. The next 4 weeks, everybody's seen it. So what's your counter off it? They have no counters up. They run that same tight end motion. And I am so mad because I think this is great. They could have whole packages built off this with play action, with RPOs, with different runs. That tight end motion, Eric All motions across the formation, kicks out the end man. That's okay. And you can run power that way. You can run counter that way, whatever. But what else do you have off that look? They had one counter this year from what I remember, and it was just the deep ball to Jermaine Burton in week 2. That was completed. How do you have a counter in week 2 for that play? Something that plays off that in week 2, and you're now in week 8 and you still don't have one? Because the Eagles were kind of cheating a little bit when they saw that. They see that, and you would start to see like guys slant over or they're cheating over to that gap because they know that run's going that way. And you're running power and counter, so it's not going to be a run that can take advantage of that and go behind them. The running back read on those runs is follow the offensive lineman that's pulling. That's essentially the entire read. Unless this gets screwed up beyond repair, you're going to be able to hit that hole. And they did get screwed up beyond repair, so, you know, blame who you want. But, yeah, that's frustrating. That is watching that and going, this should be something that's huge. And then they ran that pistol diamond, and I went on and on about how much I love this. They didn't really run it, and then your only run in that play is motion the tight end and kick out the end. And I got real frustrated because I was watching the Raiders defense yesterday, and I looked at the Chiefs. They're in pistol diamond, and they had like 5 different runs in 1 week. I've never seen them run this formation, and then they come out and run 5 different runs in 1 game out of that formation. Come on. Like that is what should be happening. You should have like, it doesn't have to be that many runs. 3 runs. Have your power and counter one way. Have a run that goes the other way, away from the tight end motion. Maybe have a run where nobody motions out of that formation. And then have your play action off of it, because I think the play action could be huge. The RPOs could be big on that. Just RPO the run. If they're going to cheat it, just have him, instead of kick out the end man, run past the end man. And, you know, Brady hit Gronk for a touchdown in the Super Bowl with the Buccaneers years ago against the Chiefs on that specific play. It was from shotgun, though. And the tight end looked like he's going to kick him out, ran past him. Brady throws it, touchdown. Because when they cheat it, you're wide open. You have space to run. So that is the most frustrating to me, because I shouldn't, and I think some people just go like, yeah, I could predict the play, and they just mean like run. No, I shouldn't know what run it is. I shouldn't know what direction it's going. I shouldn't know, like, if I know what direction this run is going and a 50-50 shot at what run it actually is schematically, we got issues anytime you see that motion. So find a better way to run that. And the staple plays they run, the duo and the inside zone, why does it stink? Like, those are supposed to be the plays that you go, I can hang my hat on this. Like, no matter what front they're in, no matter what defense we're getting, no matter how good they are, we've repped this so much that we can run this in any moment and be able to pick up 4 yards. They haven't. So it's frustrating. I mean, their run game, I thought the most glaring stat when I was researching was over the last 4 weeks, they have a 19% success rate on the ground. That's obviously dead last. The next closest is the New England Patriots. And do you know what their success percentage is?
Probably again
30. Yeah. So it's over 10% better. When you're over 10% worse than the Patriots, can you name a guard playing for the Patriots? It might be Mike Jordan. So I don't think it's just the offensive line. I don't think these backs are that bad, even if they've played poorly. So I run back to coaching and of like, you have to be able to, a lot of this to me is coaching. Like I know these guys got to play better, but I get to the point you're 8 weeks in and guys miss assignments. 3rd and 2, Kappa doesn't pull to the linebacker. Why? What happened? And Eric he's supposed to kick out. It didn't matter, but he ends up just running into the left tackle, Cody Ford, on the play instead of kicking out the other defensive end or the outside linebacker that was down on the formation. Why did he miss that assignment? Why are they both missing their assignments on the pool? To me, that's coaching. We're this late. You have to have a higher standard than this when you're out there on the field.
Yeah, I agree. And, that's on Zach Taylor. That's on Frank Pollock. Frank Pollock is the offensive line and run game coordinator.
Go to the running backs coach too.
Believe me, the running backs coach, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you're doing.
Same guys. Like, yes, it's on Pollock, it's on Taylor, it's on pitcher, it's on the running back coach. And Eric Hall missing assignment, that's at this point, tight end coach. Like,
yeah,
what's going on with that? Like the defense is missing all their assignments, and that goes to Lou and the defensive back coaches and all that. This team shouldn't have this many missed assignments.
Yeah.
And it's going to be November tomorrow.
Well, the thing is, if they lose this week, they've got to make. I don't know if they make a change mid-season because none of it matters because they're going to be completely out of everything. But you need to send a message because I know a lot of people, and I've always felt like this with the front office. There's a couple things, and I know they won't do a trade. I know that's not going to happen, but there's some bodies out there that you could probably get on your defensive side that you can make a trade for a 6th rounder when you see where some of these guys are going for. The Bengals front office, the Bengals coaching, the players, everybody is to blame for where they're at right now. And it's absolutely crazy to be sitting at 3-5. We could say all we want about, they could be 5-3 if a couple plays would have went, a different way. I would have concerns if they were 5-3 right now, because if that kick goes in from Evan McPherson, if they don't get the call in 4th and 16, this team is 5-3 with the same issues. There's still major concerns of where they're at right now. Obviously, they're in better position because they have 2 more wins on the season, but they haven't really looked good all season, to be honest with you. They haven't put a full game in all season in all three phases. Like we're at this point in the season, and I have no confidence going into this game to say, maybe the defense will have a bounce back game, or maybe the offense, won't have these struggles in the second half, and they'll have answers besides a scripted play in the first quarter. But outside of that, it's going to be a message to the front office because this is probably the most upset I've seen a lot of people, and you could say like, I've watched the Bengals do this before, or we've been here before. You have Joe Burrow playing the best football right now at the quarterback position. This is insanity for the way they're playing right now. And it's vets. I mean, it's veterans out there. It's obviously rookies who are getting reps, but there's a lot of people to point to right now, and it's not good enough. And if they lose to the Raiders and drop to 0-5 on the season at home, there needs to be a message sent from the Cincinnati Bengals front office, and they're going to need to start caring, or you're going to lose. You're going to start losing some people. You're going to start losing some money. And that's just where I stand right now. It's very frustrating. Like, I thought I would be moved on by Wednesday and Thursday. I was like, I'll move on to the next week. You got the Raiders, just win 1 by 1, week 1 by 1. And I'm just not there. I'm just not there right now.
So we haven't talked at all about the Raiders offense. Again, there's enough interest there of like Brock Bowers is already awesome. And look, Bengals didn't have a shot to take him, so I don't feel bad about this.
No. I don't. It's not that. I just don't even know how they're going to stop him. So
yeah. I loved him in college, and like a lot of it's translated. He's got rare movement ability for a guy his size. He's awesome after the catch. I wouldn't be surprised you see him like make some catch and then trucks over some Bengals defensive back that goes with his hands and not tries to actually tackle him. He's pretty awesome. Their run game is probably the only one that's nearly as bad as the Bengals at least in the course of the season. It's been worse. Yeah. So like the run defense should be okay. And it's not a great quarterback. So I don't predict the Raiders to have a good day, but could they score enough that if the defense creates some havoc that they win? Yeah. Because you got Bowers and Jacoby Myers is having a good year for them. Although worth noting, he's a full participant. He's probably playing. He was limited last week or yesterday. I think the one part that is worth noting on this is I don't think this is a very good offensive line. when you look across, it's a lot of injuries. It's a lot of Colton Miller's a pretty good player at left tackle, which is probably the worst thing to hear as a Bengals fan, that their only good offensive lineman is the one that Trey Hendrickson's going to go against the entire game. But Trey Hendrickson's actually been pretty good against Miller in the past. So I expect Trey Hendrickson to play better than he did last week. The rest of it is you have Jackson Powers Johnson. I believe he's playing center because Andre James, their normal center, is hurt. He's still a DNP. And then Dylan Parham is also hurt. He's normally their right guard. He's a limited practice both days, so maybe assume he plays. I don't know who Thayer Munford is, but he is apparently their right tackle. And I guess at left guard, if it's going to be Powers Johnson at center, then it'll be Whitehair or Jordan Meredith over there, maybe Andres Pete. They all, I think, could play left guard. I didn't see who did it last week for them. But what I am trying to get to is this is the game if another Bengals defensive lineman is going to show up and take some of the pressure off of Hendrickson. This is the game. You talk about the right tackle. I don't want to predict it. I think this could be a Myles Murphy has a good game, though.
It might
be. Because it's Thayer Munford. Like, I haven't watched him. Maybe he's a secret superstar, but that is not Lane Johnson. And the thing is, people are going to go like, well, yeah, every week could have been that. I think this is a big one for him because, one, it seems like he's over the knee injury. I didn't want to use this as an excuse or anything for him, but when you look at his get-off numbers across the past few weeks, the first week he was back, it was about like 0.9. And 0.9 is, I think that's about average. So it's 0.9, 0.9, 0.9, like 3 weeks in a row after the injury. Last week, 0.71. That's faster than Trey Hendrickson, who was at 0.72. Oh. So if you're able to fire off the ball like that, now, does he have a bunch of moves to string together with this? Doesn't look like it. That's the part that's a little frustrating about, like, what's the development? Do you blame Hobby for that? Like, why is he coming in the year with the same, issues? I don't know. But I think that get off in size alone should be enough that he could create some pressure in this game. Sam Hubbard, limited participant in practice too. So maybe he gets a little bit extra run. I think that's also a frustrating part of this is he gets like 30% of snaps. He had 6 pass rushes last week. 6. What's he supposed to do? Like, give the guy 15 pass rushes and let's see what happens. I think this could be a game for him. I also think anybody on the interior, anybody with a pulse, like BJ Hill's been pretty good this year. So I think he might have a solid game. Sheldon Rankins, show what you got paid for. Like, this should be also, just like this could be a Myles Murphy game, to me, this should be a Sheldon Rankins game. This is like, when you watch Rankins the past few years, if he got an opponent like this, he took advantage of it. And you could think of the game against the Bengals with Alex Kappa. What do you have? 2, should have been 3 sacks, multiple pressures outside of that. So I'm not predicting anything to happen, but I think if you are going like, can anybody ever get pressure outside of Trey Hendrickson? I think Sheldon Rankins, BJ Hill, and Myles Murphy have a shot this week to be able to do it. They have advantageous matchups. They're not facing superstars. I think Murphy is finally recovered from his injury. I'd like to see him out there over Hubbard if Hubbard's going to be limited, because Hubbard already looks a little bit more limited this year than he has in the past. It's not that he's been terrible, but as a pass rusher, he hasn't really provided much. So why don't you just yank him off the field in those situations? They need to get to pass rushing situations, which I think they will this week. I think that their run defense is better than the Raiders' run offense. So they should be able to get into pass rushing situations. And the game script shouldn't be bad. Like, all those things point to they should be able to rush the passer in this game. But we'll see, because they haven't been able to do it. That is what I guess I'd point to. Watch out for Brock Bowers as a bad thing, and watch out for this pass rush as could be a sneaky good game for them.
I hope so. Who's going to be on Brock Bowers?
I mean, what's funny is he has catches, and he got matched up in essentially man coverage, like not spot drops up. Like, he got matched up and got manned up by Joey Porter Jr., Marlon Humphrey, and Trent McDuffie. And he has a catch against all 3 of them in like basically man coverage. That was crazy to me watching that. It's like, man, this guy really was a wide receiver. He caught a go ball against Trent McDuffie last week. Caught it, held it over his head, 25 yards. Awesome. If I had to guess, man, if I was the Bengals, I'm doubling him, and I'm going to let Jacoby Myers beat me because he's the bigger threat to me. But if I had to guess what the Bengals are going to do, I think you will see like Von Bell linebackers, but I think Von Bell will be the big matchup. They'll go like, hey, we need size against this guy. And, he's too physical for corners. He's too fast for linebackers. So we're going to try to match him with the safety. They also just play a lot of zone. So that's also going to be a part of it, is that they're just playing zone. They're not really trying to match up with them. But zone becomes man eventually. And he does a really good job when he gets against linebackers and safeties of running a choice route where he has the option to run an out route, sit down, or run a slant. And he has cooked defenses with that all year. There's also one specific play that they have run, I think, 3 times in the first quarter of games. And the only reason I know that this is all true is because I thought it was a really cool play. They run a play action play, and it looks like when you run play action, you have that tight end come over, but they run it. The quarterback rolls to his right, and then Bowers looks like he's coming over and then flips and goes out. And it has been an explosive play 3 times. So all 3 times they've run it. So if I was the Bengals, I'm going, hey, you start seeing that. Don't cheat. Do not cheat. Do not cheat the over. Stick with him. He might turn around and run the other way.
All right. Well, Cincinnati Bengals back home at Paycor Stadium, where they have yet to win a game this season, and it'll be November. For some reason, there's a big spread against them, or in favor of the Cincinnati Bengals, and it really hasn't changed much, even though that T. Higgins is more than likely out. Hopefully, Orlando Brown Jr. can play in this game. As you mentioned, I'm expecting more of Miles Murphy, hopefully, on the defensive side. And hopefully we see a bounce-back game, I would say, even on both sides, even though offensively they really did get something going in the first half, just couldn't finish it in the second half. Mike, what is your score prediction?
Okay. So, I think the spread is high, too. But I also think if you, listen to people that cover the NFL or just a general fan, they all just think the Bengals will figure it out. They think we're more worried about this than, the people that are more involved in this are. And they might figure it out. I don't know, but I think the spread's high. I think that the Bengals also kind of turtle up when they have advantages like this. If they get to a 10-point lead, they're going to just try to run the ball, and they're just going to, maybe Joe bail them out of 3rd and long repeatedly type of situation. I think this game goes under 46.5, and I don't think the Bengals cover the spread. So I would say something like 23-20. I think the Bengals win. If I feel okay about that, but do I think that they blow them out? No. I don't think this Raiders team is that bad. I do agree with Taylor there. And I just think that you saw it with the Browns. You saw it with the Giants. This offense kind of doesn't push the pedal down when they have, when they think that the opposing offense isn't that good. And I think you saw that with those 2 teams of just we know we'll beat them. We know we could stop them. I don't think you should play that way, but I think they play that way sometimes.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's going to be a close game. They're not getting my confidence back until they win a few games in a row, and they have a tough task after this one. I'm not going to count the Raiders out. I think it's going to be a close game. I will say 20-17 under, not a lot of offense. Maybe this is a good defensive performance from them. Would love to see it, because after last week, and even in the run game, the interior, the running backs, the play calling, everything looked pretty brutal in most of that game. So I would love to see a bounce back. And hey, 1 win at a time. Be nice to get one at home. So I'll take the Bengals. We'll see what happens. Make sure you check out Mike's piece if you do have concerns and you're wondering what is going on with the run game. It's really good over on Bengals Talk. Follow Mike over on Twitter, Bengals_Sands. You can follow me at Lindsay Patterson. We'll be back later to talk about the Bengals and Raiders post-game on It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati.